Today, we will be arguing against that 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice are essential for every elite level performance. As first speaker, I will be arguing the 10,000 hour rule and persuading that this theory is false. This will be followed by my fellow colleague Andreas, who will be addressing the 10,000 hour myth as a problem and the other factors that athletes need to consider. To conclude, Christian will summarise the overall findings as well as the dramatic changes individuals need to experience to conquer elite playing level. Founder of the 10,000 hour rule, Anders Ericsson, says that the use and misuse of his research has created a complete misunderstanding on the role of deliberate practice. In the book Changing the Game by John O'Sullivan, evidence suggests that training for 10,000 hours does not make you an elite athlete. There are numerous pathways to master. A number of factors must be taken into consideration, for example, motivation, genetics, disposition, and access to the right coaching. Hours of deliberate practice is simply not sufficient, and without these factors, training alone cannot predict elite level performance. For all those believers out there in regards to the 10,000 hour rule, have you ever considered about creating an environment that is fun, enjoyable, as well as physically and mentally rewarding? Without creating this fun and exciting environment, as well as placing a high demand on the child, results have proven that many children have walked away from the sport. O'Sullivan spoke about a study which involved professional hockey players. The study showed that on average, players spent 10,000 hours in sport participation, but only 3,000 of those hours were in hockey-specific deliberate practice. An interesting article I came across was Sources and Consequences of Athletic Burnout Amongst College Athletes by Gould. A burnout can result from overtraining, overloading, or overreaching. With the expected 10,000 hours needed to be an elite athlete, it is no mystery that burnouts are very common. According to a study in the US, 35 million children between the ages of 4 to 14 play organised sports. Over 70% of those children will drop out by the age of 12, and another 15% of children would have already experienced symptoms of a burnout due to the high demands and pressure placed on the individual in that chosen sport. I now pass you on to Andreas, who will be debating the myth behind the 10,000 hour rule.
Yes, I agree, Francesca. There are many factors that influence children to participate and, in many occasions, also excel in certain sports. The topic at hand is whether 10 years of experience or 10,000 hours of training will produce a talented, successful athlete. I strongly disagree. If I may read a sentence from Journal article, The Marvels of Elite Sports, How to Get There 2001, British Journal of Sports Medicine. Athletes all have their own unique development patterns, where some may take longer than 10 years to become expert and require a variety of training methods. This is very evident at every soccer pitch in local areas on a Saturday morning, where teams all have those one or two players that are far more advanced than others, even at the same age. Other factors also include environmental, where others help in the early development of children in sports opportunities created by parents, trainers, coaches, talent development programs, and the competition structure itself. These schemes are developed in order to gain interest of children at an early age. This in itself plays a role in also boosting numbers for the sport. The myth is 10,000 hours of practice will make you an expert, master, or professional in your chosen field, although this is not guaranteed. A sentence from book John O'Sullivan, The 10,000 Hour Myth, 2003. He states, putting all eggs in one basket and ignoring the role of genetics and talent in athletic performance. Other factors also include coaching, the psychological factors that affect performance, even luck, all play a part. We are not all built the same. Ignoring the factors that without enjoyment and intrinsic motivation, players will not continue to train at the required level of focus and intensity to become an elite athlete. So again, there are many external factors that influence and help to develop young athletes. Malcolm Gladwell states in his paper from 2003, The Myth that 10,000 hours of practice makes you an expert, that evidence shows that simply training deliberately for 10,000 hours does not make one an elite athlete, and there are many paths to mastery and unfortunately the believers of the 10,000 hour rule have contributed to the adultification of youth sports. This raises again the question whether children today are being pushed too early from a younger age, resulting in lack of interest in the sport. Thank you. I will now pass you on to Christian to sum up.
As third speaker, I would first like to start by restating my team's position against the idea that 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice are essential for every elite performance. My fellow colleagues Francesca and Andreas have presented strong supporting arguments with well-supported research which has advanced our debate. Before I conclude my team's case, I want to show everyone a snapshot from a 1993 psychology paper by Malcolm Gladwell on his philosophy that 10,000 hours of practice makes you an expert is a myth. Here is the breakdown. It states 10,000 hours to master your craft, that's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 44 weeks a year for 5.5 years. Better get started. Before I continue, I want everyone to take a minute and think about this statement. I want you to ask yourself one simple question. Who has the time? Gladwell emphasizes that participating as an elite sports star on average accounts for 15 years of one's life. Some individuals even less. To complete 8 hours a day of training requires individuals to quit their jobs, reduce time spent with family and friends, and ultimately creates an environment which is not compatible or stable to live. In young athletes, it's not right to take them away from education, such as school, or friends as a social and interaction attributes as being developed. Being an elite sport individual accounts for only a small period of one's life. As upcoming coaches, we want to develop a holistic individual, not just one who can operate at a particular task for such a small amount of time. A study from New York University sports scientist Dr. Joe Baker suggests there are 3 key elements other than practice athletes need to possess in order to become an elite or succeed. These are intrinsic motivation, so self-belief, which comes from within, enjoyment. If it's not fun, they won't hang around long enough, so they therefore can't be good. And autonomy, ownership over their sport and experience, setting personal goals, things like that. Without these elements, no matter how long one trains for, an athlete will never be elite. Mr. Gladwell further proves that 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice is a myth through an experiment which was conducted between chess players and musicians. The experiment demonstrated the correlation between practice and success and found huge differences in how much chess grandmasters and elite musicians had practiced for. For example, one chess player had taken 26 years to reach a level that another only reached in 2. Clearly, there's more at work than just the sheer volume of hours practice. The evidence is quite clear that some practice people do reach an elite level of performance without extensive practice, while other people fail to do so despite all the extensive practice performed. Why is this the case? A radio interview with BBC World Service Health Check Organisation states that eliteness stems from one's genetics. In other words, some people adapt to training far better than others. Here's a stat for you to think about. 1/4 of Olympic athletes were found to have done their sport for fewer than 4 years. This just proves that you can become an elite with less training if you have the right makeup. Therefore, in summarizing in our argument, even with 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice, you can still not be an elite athlete. Some individuals may never reach 10,000 hours because they are prone to injury. As upcoming coaches, we need to nurture and develop the holistic individual, which consists of 3 elements: an athlete's physical health, athlete's emotional well-being, and an athlete's spiritual health. All 3 aspects need to be developed to ensure a well-rounded individual is grown. Focusing too much on the physical aspects of practice and training, taking individuals away from early development, is not appropriate for developing this holistic being. Again, I would like to thank my team members Francesca and Andreas for providing strong arguments and supporting decisions that 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice is not essential for every elite performance. Thank you.